Thank you, everyone. So, MetaRex. It's a shipping container with a label. Thank you.
So for all the non-engineers out there, just to give that a little bit of context, that was the end of a conversation about 6 years ago. And it was one of those what-if conversations. I'll give you a little bit of context. It was at a Hollywood Professional Association tech retreat. And at that particular time, I was extremely frustrated, inspired, desperate, and generally overwhelmed by the state of some of the workflows that I was hearing about during the presentations. A particular one that struck me was one from Turner. And Turner had investigated to see how many different versions of one of their programs there were out there. So they followed it forensically through the whole of the supply chain. They found 200 versions of the single program, including some of the fourth and fifth generation. For me, at the time I was working for a QC company, it's like, wow, 200 different QCs. That is incredible. I wish I could have a way of QCing all of those. And that started off a conversation with Bruce. No, those that don't know Bruce, he's also known as Mr. MXF. He was instrumental in developing that and also IMF. So the conversation went quickly to, oh, wow, IMF, it's great, it's modular, but what about the metadata? So I was talking about what my dreams were, what my ideas were. So I wanted, what if we could create a QC passport that followed the content all the way down the supply chain? It would mean everything would go down very quickly. There wouldn't be callbacks. Oh, there's a problem here. It would go back to the production teams. What if we were looking at different versioning? Where is all this metadata? Where are we saving it? So that was the answer that Bruce gave me. Now we're going to tell you how that will address some of those problems that I just spoke about. So here's Bruce going to tell you how it works.
Thank you, Chris. So, our industry is riddled with metadata. There is so much of it. Everybody's got their own private format, their own private protocol, their own private schema. Everyone's got a database. You've probably got many databases with different sorts of metadata that you can't interchange because the person that wrote the database is dead. Or maybe the data itself is ugly and you've never used it to drive a workflow. You might have actually used that metadata to describe it for a human. And as soon as you put it into automation, everything falls to pieces because that metadata is dirty. So how do you fix that? Well, what we're trying to do is make an envelope or a shipping container that carries your metadata, and it self-describes how you clarify that. So we have a register that says, look, inside this container is this sort of metadata. It might be telemetry from the tripod. It might be lens metadata. It might be QC metadata. It might be telemetry from the rocket that's blasting the big metal cylinder up into the air. It might be metering from how much carbon or wattage is being used on set so that you can carry that downstream to figure out how much this production actually cost in green credentials. So what we're asking of you folks is we have created an ecosystem where we can carry metadata, whether it's gigabits per second or bytes. We've demonstrated back in 1998 in the basement of the BBC that the basic system works. We demonstrated in 2019 at Bamberg Studios with Ari that we can do live VFX on set with an incremental cost of about $10 to how they were going to shoot the thing anyway. And we did that in front of the German broadcasters and it worked nicely. Then COVID got in the way and we had to stop. But now what we're trying to do is get together champions and people who have metadata workflows where the metadata kind of falls on the floor, where we can pick the metadata back up again and join it together, whether it's inside the media, whether it's outbound of the media, whether you just put a photograph in an S3 bucket so the people in archive can look at it in 40 years. MetaRex is intended to bind all of that stuff together, and we're going to give away a great big pile of free open source where anybody who's building products can use the MetaRex container system and have a free register so that people can clarify what that metadata is. And we hope to get the basic tooling all done by the end of the year, and then more applications done next year, and then we will do a hard cut-off of the project at the end of 2024, because if it's not done by then, it will never be done. Final word, Chris?
Yes, so everyone out there who has got metadata, what-ifs, anyone that's got metadata problems, so you talking about AI, metadata enrichment, localization, versioning, QC, compliance. Come talk to us. This project has been incubating for 25 years. We want you guys to come and help us make it reality.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Ruud van der Linde. I'm the founder and CEO at Infuse Video. I previously founded a company called Stream1, an online video platform which was acquired by 24i. And I'm pitching IMF to streaming origin. And we're not talking about the International Monetary Fund, but about the interoperable master file. So there's a lot of talk about personalization these days in all the trade shows, but most of it is about content discovery and not really about actually personalizing the content itself. And that's what I'll be talking about today. Dynamic video. With dynamic video, we can solve viewer problems such as photosensitive epilepsy. People who live with that currently cannot watch certain types of content because there's flashing images in there. Same goes for sensitive thematic content. Lack of visual localization, so it's like English only, all the on-screen stuff, for example. And, well, a desire to make narrative choices that is perhaps not something that everybody is struggling with, but might be in the future. And like these problems are connected to actual industry problems with churn, dissatisfaction, lack of inclusiveness, lack of accessible content. And there's also some commercial aspects to this. For example, if you create a version of content with product placement, it's the same everywhere. And there are ways to fix that. So Disney Pixar, they are already using the interoperable master file format to create multiple language content, where you can see in this example that content is being translated on screen so that you have an immersive experience rather than forced narrative subtitles, which are, I think everybody agrees, pretty ugly. So language is the main reason for doing this, but there's also culture, which is also part of inclusiveness. So in this case, this is the movie Inside Out. In the North American region, you'll see ice hockey, and in the rest of the world, it'll be football, soccer. Netflix, and especially Netflix Studios, has taken this to other types of content. So you can see the show Control Z here in Portuguese, English, and Spanish. Again, no forced narrative subtitles, but just actual immersive content. And this is also interesting. Not sure if you've seen the movie Demolition Man. It is actually different in the US from the rest of the world. In the US, there is Taco Bell product placement. You can still see it in the window if you look very closely at the bottom of the screen. I'll just replay it. At the rest of the world, they use Pizza Hut. It's the same owner, but they had to distribute this version in multiple regions. And there was some problems with that, because sometimes you might get the Taco Bell version, and then the subtitles say Pizza Hut. When they're saying Taco Bell, you read Pizza Hut, so that's confusing. And another example, Iron Man 3 in China had an extra scene with famous Chinese actors and some product placement and some acupuncture-ish surgery on Tony Stark. So how do we solve this problem at scale? Well, I just said like the interoperable master file basically gives us all we need to do this. And goals for this, in order to do this, would be like create content which is more inclusive, accessible, give studios the means to preserve creative intent. So not somebody else at some distributor is going to change something that you might not be okay with, like happened in the Netherlands when they cut out references to evolution from BBC Earth. And increase viewership and engagement because the content is more relatable. And this is just step one towards creating truly dynamic, personalized experiences. Because if you've got content that's just one big file and it's much harder to replace one segment by something that might appeal to specific audience, like a truly personalized scene. And so what we are doing, you see it on the screen, is instead of using the IMF file to create an extra visual track, replacing some scenes in a different language, we do the same, for example, for epilepsy safety, a version that has reduced gore, reduced violence. And by doing this, you can create experiences that are truly customizable by the user. So you could let the user decide. I would rather not see any blood or anything like that, but I'm okay with nudity. So the viewer could select that and would then get the content that fits. And the great thing is that this scales like any other type of streaming because it's segment-based. And this just means that there will be some like alternate versions of segments for some viewers. The current list of champions is Easy DRM, Unified Streaming, and Infuse Video. And we're really looking for people from the entire value chain. So production to authoring, ingest, transcoding, encryption, DRM, packaging, origin server, manifest file creation, and the front end or decision engine or wherever the choice gets made. What does this innovation mean for the industry as a whole? We believe that defining content on an individual basis, scene by scene, is an absolute game changer. It will change how people think of media. And on top of that, we're just talking about like localized fan experiences, these kinds of things. Like with this technology, you can actually create something that looks like, that's like your own personal movie. Like that is like an NFT to you. And we can scale that by using this technology. Thank you.